So, Bill, let's start it off.
Cool.
Everybody's wondering, a lot of people, what the hell have you been up to, man? You've got a big gap in time here since you've been out of the wrestling industry.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of great work you've been doing from turning a tragedy into something that's life-changing for and benefits other people. So I could damn you for that. I'll let you talk about that a little bit because some of the listeners might not know it's possible, everything that you've been going through and what you've accomplished in the last several years.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. So like 2015 was my departure from like the wrestling, the official wrestling business, you know. And I'm sure we'll get into that every week or however we handle it. But you know, so what happens is, you know, out of sight, out of mind, especially in wrestling. So it's funny because I just did right before the new year. I did an appearance at the old ECW arena. And so a lot of the guys, and, you know, I keep in contact with a lot of the boys, and that including the women, you know, so you keep in contact with, you know, students you had, people you trained, guys that you went up and down the road with. And it's funny because people come there and go, I can't believe you're here. I thought you were dead. And I heard that a couple of different times. And I'm like, I come home and I tell my wife, I'm like, yeah, the guy says, oh yeah, I came here because they said you're here and I thought you were dead. I'm like, well, why do they think? Because if you're out of sight, you're out of mind, you know? And then you get
in the wrestling industry, Bill kind of has that. A lot of people do go too soon. So, I mean,
yeah. And for whatever reason, if they don't hear about you, it's like you don't exist anymore. And I'd like to say I'm okay with that, but I'm not, because I really enjoy, I've tried to do at least 2 to 3 seminars a year. You know, 2 or 3 day seminars. I love doing appearances. So when someone does get in touch with me, I do my best to make sure I make that appearance or go see the fans. And because it's truly what I miss about the business, I think you hear this a lot, is the guys, is the locker room, is the people that you went up and down with, and people that you either trained with or saw train or had something to do with. And so that's the biggest thing. And then for me, you get caught up in, lack of a better term, the real world. You know, when you're out of that, there's either your career goes a different way or things like that. Unfortunately, my career didn't go a different way. My lifestyle went a different way. In 2015, my middle daughter was tragically killed by a drunk driver, a multiple offender. 3 times prior to taking my daughter's life, he had been arrested for DUI. So my journey changed, and so I've been working. And when I say I mean my family, and we started a foundation, and I've just been running that foundation 7 days a week now for 7 years. And then, you know, you try to get out there and meet people, and I think we assume that because we're on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or, you know, Ticking the Talk and all those great things that, you know, people kind of stay up with you. But I find that the wrestling fans, if it's not wrestling, they don't stay up with it. You know, they're kind of just, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're just, that's their gig. So I think when people see me in public or I'm at an appearance or something, and you tell them what you're doing, they're blown away by that. And you know, we so much appreciate people's prayers and support and condolences, but I find it odd at this day and age that 7 years after, there's people that don't know what you're doing. And that's why this show, this podcast is going to be so important, because we get to catch up with people and we get to reach them again. And you know, for lack of a better word, I'm doing great. And it was, like I said, it was really good to be out in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully that opens a door for me to for people who realize, like, I'm not gone. I you know, I'm still out there doing that thing, but my main focus is the foundation and all that stuff. So I just thought it was kind of weird when people said, "Wow, I thought you were dead," and like, you don't want to hear that. You definitely don't want to hear that.
Like I said, and the industry that you were involved in is notorious, unfortunately, for early deaths. I mean,
Yeah,
and so that's a legitimate. That could actually be a legitimate concern for somebody.
sure. Yeah. And the surprise on their face when they come see you, go, wow, would you sign? Yeah, I'd love to sign it. But they're more excited, I think, that I was actually there,
Yeah,
and that sounds like conceited, but I genuinely feel good when people know I'm okay and they're concerned of like, wow, you're here. Like, oh yeah,
it's
it's
Hugh
me.
Morris. It's Hugh
Yeah.
Morris. Dang it.
It's me. I'm here. You just
So let
can't.
me ask you
It's just
something.
funny those cats that come up to you that in your heart they got to be at least 10 years older than you, and they sit there and say, "I remember watching you when I was in grade school." You lie, and that's why I make everybody pull out their license. I
Yeah,
want to know how old you are, and they got me by 10 years. I go, I wasn't even I wasn't even in high school when you were watching wrestling.
man, what does that say? Wow. Oh
There's a,
no.
I'll tell you, it's an eclectic group of people that come out to see it. It's really cool.
So, Bill, the tragedy happened. How long did it take you before you started what you're doing now? Because I know there's a mourning period, but at what point did you realize like this is what I want to do? And then how long after did you start doing it?
I don't think so. For for clarity purposes, I don't want to do this. I didn't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't have to do it. Um, we we as a family were surrounded by good people. My church, my immediate family, my best friends. I've grown up, been with them 50 years of my life, and we started to meet people that were affected in the same way. And I had an opportunity one time to speak to a bunch of students, and 1,500 students stayed and got in line to either shake my wife's hand, hug my daughter, or give me a hug. But they shared stories about how they were affected by something. And that's who Carrie is. Carrie was a people person. We get jaded as athletes, performers, entertainers, whatever we're known as. We get kind of jaded to the real world because while we appreciate everyone, our downtime is our downtime. And for me, my whole career, I hid when I was home. I tried to stay out of the public. You wouldn't see me shopping. You wouldn't see me in restaurants or anything like that. So it was very unusual for me to step out into that thing of meeting people and start speaking to kids. And my wife said, well, it's instead of waiting for people to contact you, it's time for us to do what we need to do. So we started the foundation almost to a year to date of the tragedy. So by October of 2016, the foundation was formed in Florida. And since that time, I have spoken to over 100,000 students. We've reached tens of thousands of law enforcement officers and first responders. We've traveled the country now. But it goes back to it's not what I want to do. So everybody knows, like, I have no problem really putting my business out there a lot of times, unless it's really absurd. But so everybody knows, this is volunteer work. This foundation is volunteer work, and I do it 7 days a week. I'm in our office 12 hours a day. We have victim services that run 24 hours. So if someone needs to reach us, we're available. And so all this is, and it's not meant for any other thing, but for everybody to realize how important this truly is. I haven't brought a paycheck home in almost 7 years. And that's blessings from God and my wife working and
Mm-hmm.
the support we have that allows me to spend the time to kind of try to help others not go through this, or people that have been through it, try to help them out. And I've always said, and I've said this in a few different interviews, it all comes back to wrestling, because without wrestling, without 30 years in my back pocket, I don't think I ever could have stood up in front of people and talked and, kind of expressed myself in a certain way. But I learned over the years that you don't look at people's faces, you look above their heads and you don't see them. And so I address, we've been in front of people from 3,500 in attendance to 50 in attendance. So that's what I do. And when we're not traveling and speaking, we're working on legislature here in Florida and now in New Jersey. And we just announced our chapter in Alabama. So we have 3 recognized chapters, nationally recognized, Florida, New Jersey, Alabama. And I'm sure there's more to come because there's people out there that need help. And there's people out there that have a lot to offer other than sitting and just trying to deal with loss by themselves, That's
Yeah.
the serious part of Bill DeMott.
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of, you take wrestling, and a lot of people when they get out of wrestling, they don't know what to do
Yeah.
with themselves. A lot of them don't even, and I actually get this from, I listened to a interview earlier with Chris Masters,
Yeah.
as you would know him. And he was with Chris Van Vliet. He was just stating that he dropped out of high school to do this, to wrestle. And he didn't have a lot of the life skills. He realized when the pandemic hit, he was like, I'm going to go get some education. I'm going to learn some things. So it's cool that you can take some things out of this, like your ability to speak in the public to make a difference and turn it into something positive post your career with professional wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. I had written a book about that first half of my life, like leading up to when I was out of wrestling. Excuse me. So I dabbled in a little bit of being an author. And when I was done in 2015, I was shooting an independent movie. I'd done some Ford commercials, and you have opportunities where people know you and go, hey, would you like to do this? So I had the whole manager, and I was doing auditions, and I was making money doing things outside of wrestling. But it all stems from wrestling. It all stems from, I don't think the Bill DeMott of 30 something years ago would ever get in front of a camera, and whether it's a Ford commercial or whether it's, just voiceover work or whatever, anything. And now speaking to 100,000 students, that doesn't happen without wrestling. Fortunately for me, I have some background in education, but I have a ton of life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I try to bring to the table. And I think that helps. I know that helps the people that we deal with, is not hearing something from a book or something that's, kind of trained to say. You're getting firsthand knowledge and experience from that. And that's kind of always the way I treated wrestling too, was just my experience, my knowledge, and however we can make that work.
Yeah. And
Complicated, man.
Yeah, it is. But then again, it's for all the right reasons though.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk a lot about wrestling as well, but that's the important thing, is that's not what defines you. You kind of have this reputation. If you just watch the Tough Enough, what Bill DeMott needed to be on Tough Enough,
Yeah.
it's not the guy that I've come to know here. You're like a big teddy bear, man. You're not this reputation's a full, always out of control, yelling,
Yes.
screaming. In the day, you are a family man. And you're putting in work for a good cause, way beyond, more important than professional wrestling.
I think people need to know that about a lot of the cats in this business. Our job, when the red light is on, we know our job. My job in Tough Enough was to be that guy. Unfortunately, what happens is whether you're a youngster growing up watching the business and Tough Enoughs and all these things, you have a preconceived notion of who people are, and I've heard the same thing said about Stone Cold. You watch Stone Cold on our last episodes of Tough Enough, and people go, well, that guy's not cool. He's a complete hard ass and all these things. It couldn't be farther from the truth. But when the red light's on, you have a job. When my job was specifically, you go after them as it pertains to Tough Enough. The issue the cool thing was after the show was over and all those kids got to know me as the person, not their trainer for 10 hours a day for 3 months. And that's, we didn't socialize with those kids in any season or anything whatsoever. So you got to know them and they're like, wow, like you're a real person. The issue going forward is every time you come back, people already have a preconceived notion of who you are until they get a chance to sit down like this or do something. But there's a ton of cats in this business that have so much to offer, and people just have a preconceived notion. And I chalk it up to, that means I did my job. I've always looked at it that way. Like if people hate me or are afraid of me or talk about what a hard ass I am and they've never done anything with me, then I've done my job because I put it in their head and they know on the visual thing of visually seeing me right then and there, they've decided who I am. So that's who they get.
And that's what we're going to do with this podcast and video. We're recording on Boomcaster, by the way. My friends have an awesome platform here. But that's what we're going to do on this. We're going to try to deep dive into you more. You said to me, hey, I'm an open book. Ask me whatever. We're going to get more, in another episode, we'll get more into the tough enough stuff. And you're an honest guy. And this is part of that for me. And what I want to get across to people is more of Bill DeMott, not Bill DeMott, the wrestler. But then again, I think it's important that we hear your side of a lot of things that happen in the professional wrestling industry. All right. This is Jeff Townsend of Jeff Townsend Media. Thank you for checking out the podcast on YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to it, share it with the world, share it with all your friends, your mothers, your brothers, your sisters, everybody. Also, there are plenty of other videos for you to listen to and watch in the meantime. This podcast is also available on all major podcast listening platforms. If you want to learn more about it, go to BillDeMott.com.